Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Happy Thursday to everybody watching the show. Appreciate you all for tuning in and filing in the comments as we get ready to discuss today's topic and talk more about the Buccaneers. It's been a 3-game losing streak for the Bucs. I think we're all in agreement. We hope that losing streak ends on Sunday with a win over the San Francisco 49ers. But if that's not the case, how long will this Bucs losing streak last for? They do have the bye coming up next week. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Liam Cohen today, Casey Rogers, some other players that we spoke to, and get into much, much more of this Bucs 49ers matchup. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my co-host for today, fellow colleague of pewterreport.com as well. It's Adam Slavon. Adam, welcome. How we doing?
Matt, I'm doing great. It's great to be on with you and discuss some more Bucs football after an eventful day at OBP, talking to Liam Cohen, Casey Rogers, and also Kate Otten. He was at the presser today, so a lot to get into. You mentioned it, though, the losing streak. It's been 3 games. They're facing a team they've lost to each of the past 2 years. Are things looking a little more optimistic this time around, though? The fact that the 49ers, they don't quite look like the juggernaut that they did as recently as last season.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible for the Bucs to win this game on Sunday, and I want them to win. I don't want to cover a team that's losing.
Yeah.
But when they've lost 3 in a row and they're doing the same exact thing that they did last season, where they started out 3-1 and then lose the next 3, it's kind of difficult to be like, yes, everything is going great for this team. And 2 thumbs up, everybody. Hey, well, they're playing for each other and they're all great friends. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. That's not the case right now. Now, I will give the Bucs a lot of credit. And we spoke to Kate Otten today, and I asked him specifically, like, what's the mood in the locker room right now? Because on the one hand, I think you can be optimistic about the offense is still looking pretty good. Kate Otten, I mean, we were discussing, Adam, me, you, pretty much everyone at Pewter Report that was at the media room today, and Greg Allman and Rick Stroud was in there too. Kate Otten may be a Pro Bowl tight end this year, kind of based on how, everybody's kind of ranking this year. But anyway, you have a positive with the Bucs offense, like start figuring things out without their top 2 guys, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Also with the fact that I love what Liam Cohen said today up at the press conference with, we got to stop giving defenses all of this credit. Like, we have some good players, too. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So you have that as a positive. The defense, while there's so many bad things to look at, one thing I will say, D-line got it together, at least with the pass rush with Vita Vea and with Kalijah Cansey. The coverage was more missed tackles and things of that than necessarily guys wide open. Now, sometimes Travis Kelce was wide open, 3-yard passes, 4-yard passes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But things are not good. I don't feel great about the Bucs, but I don't think it's as dire as maybe it could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And like the defense in the first half on Monday night did not look as bad as it did in recent weeks. Going up against the 49ers, a Chiefs offense that where Patrick Mahomes, he isn't really playing at that MVP level. They were able to stop Kareem Hunt really until like the 4th quarter, Matt, when you kind of saw those 5-yard runs turn into 15-yard runs. Were those missed tackles, and that kind of led to their downfall toward the end of the game. But overall, you would have to say, like Travis Kelce, he was getting 5-6-yard catches. Like, he was not averaging and getting these big gains. So that's a positive sign kind of going into this matchup. But when you look at it, the big thing with the 49ers offense that the Bucs and Todd Bowles will have to stop are the running backs. Kyle Shanahan, he's at it again. And getting Christian McCaffrey back this week, looks like he's practicing, trending in the right direction, going to be ready to go. They have Jordan Mason. They have Isaiah Guerrero. Whoever they put in at running back, they're getting big gains. And the Bucs, going through these walkthrough practices this week, they're not really kind of focusing and getting physical and tackling. That could be an issue at Ray J on Sunday.
Right. It's a little bit of a catch-22 because they have been so battered with injuries this year. I mean, Jamel Dean is still on IR. Marquise Watts we saw running. Mike Evans has been out. We don't have to go down the entire laundry list. So on the one hand, they are coming off of a short week. They did just play on Monday. It's very difficult to be like, all right, get right back out there and bang up your bodies even more. But on the other hand, if tackling is one of the major issues on this team and defensively specifically, well, I guess offense, you're not really tackling unless you throw an interception.
Yeah.
Tackling is a big time issue. You have to practice that, or you have to work on something, and you can if you're not doing anything besides a walkthrough. I tend to lean on the side of just try to be as healthy as possible, because at the end of the day, you're a professional. You try to make the tackle, and I think this isn't even a Bucs thing. It's a pet peeve of mine. I hate watching all of these defenders just launch their bodies at players and try to hit them with the hard shoulder. Nobody wraps up anymore.
No.
Nobody wraps up. And it bothers me to no end, because it's like, I'd be willing to bet like 65% of tackles would go down as an actual tackle instead of a broken tackle if you just wrapped up. But, that's not the world we live in. That's not the case in the NFL. But you just talked about Christian McCaffrey a second ago. If he does play, and it very much looks like that he's going to play this week, do you think he plays 45 snaps or whatever the case may be? Do they limit him in? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very interesting, because Kyle Shanahan, he loves Christian McCaffrey. He's utilized him heavily since they traded for him a couple years ago. He actually tied, he was second with 272 carries last season with Rachaad White. So he really likes to get him the ball. If he's healthy and ready to go, you'd have to think he plays him a lot. But also, the success of Jordan Mason and Guerendo can't be understated. Mason's third in the league in rushing yards. They'll be utilized. So maybe it's just not the McCaffrey show. Maybe he gets 10 to 15 carries, but also kind of sprinkling in some other running backs too.
I need him for my fantasy team, man. I need to know the answers, but it wouldn't make sense for Kyle Shanahan to, kind of reveal that information. I think we'll get a sprinkle of Christian McCaffrey. I don't think we're going to get the whole kick caboodle just yet, which is, good news for the Buccaneers. They don't want to see a lot of Christian McCaffrey, but to the Niners' credit, they certainly need him if they want to win the Super Bowl, but they don't have to rely on him for the entire game because of all the running backs that you just mentioned. And Jordan Mason, for sure, started from the beginning of the year, a guy that wasn't really well known. It's only been on the team for a little bit. So, credit to the Niners for finding ways to be successful without doing anything like over the top. And I think that was another thing that Liam Cohen spoke about today. He was actually speaking about the 49ers offense, because you had asked him about Shanahan, which kind of crazy to me that he had never met Kyle Shanahan before, just given the fact that, one, they were in the NFC West together, and two, if Liam Cohen played under Sean McVay, like McVay and Shanahan are like best friends. I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me that they would have never crossed paths at one way or a moment. But what Liam Cohen had to say about Kyle Shanahan and that offense specifically was they don't sure, there's motion and stuff like that. They just focus on what they're great at and just do it over and over and over again. It's not all these crazy designs and concepts. Sometimes it looks like that, but it's really simplified to how do we run the ball this way? What type of throws are we going to make? And they do it almost to perfection. So I think for the Bucs, it's just kind of like simplifying what they need to read, what their keys are against the 49ers defense. If they can simplify a lot of stuff, I'm not saying they're going to get 3 and outs and things of that nature, but I think a lot of those touchdowns that they've allowed over the past 3 weeks on their losing streak, those touchdowns will turn into field goals. And the way that the Bucs offense is playing, field goals are winners for Tampa Bay.
Matt, I think that's a great point. And when you kind of mentioned that about the simplicity of the 49ers offense, you look at the example of the quarterback play that they had. So they had Jimmy Garoppolo. They were able to make the NFC Championship game. He's not a world beater at quarterback. But then they move on to a guy like Brock Purdy, where he isn't tasked with being this elite signal caller. He just has to play within the system. And they have that system so fine-tuned, and all the guys are so dialed in that they're able to execute at such a high level. That's why they can put in a 6th-round pick like Guerendo, why they can have a Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback, and they're still
Yeah.
able to have that success is because the system just caters to the players and their abilities so well. So when you go back to like Liam Cohen, you kind of see that coming into fruition this year because the Bucs offense is fifth in scoring. They've been able to have that success without their playmakers. They're still finding ways to make plays. But the thing will be Todd Bowles' defense. They've given up 30 points or more in each of their 4 losses over this 4 or 5 game stretch. They gave up 27 to the Saints. It's a glaring problem.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, how will Bulls defense adjust? They adjusted in the first half against Kansas City, but they need to keep it up for a whole game against such a well-oiled machine against San Francisco. I don't know if I see that really being the case on Sunday.
Right. The problem is the Bucs have answers to like half of the test, but not the whole test. And it's like you need the togetherness, you need the communication. You can't allow a blunder for even 1 out of 10 plays. Like you could be right 9 out of 10 times, but if you get the one play wrong, that's where it's really kind of eaten up the Bucs more than anything else. Like there's been minimal adjustments, and I'm curious with the linebacker situation how that adjustment will continue to go. I have the picture of George Kittle on here because Q's44, a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, thank you for your support, is asking who will be on Kittle. And I think Kittle might be the most important factor into all of this. He leads the 49ers in receiving yards. We spoke to Casey Rogers today, who said he's had a lot of sleepless nights game planning for tight ends between Mark Andrews going off against the Bucs and Kyle Pitts going off against the Bucs twice. And then, of course, Travis Kelce having 14 catches for 100 yards last game.
Yep.
I can already tell you for Pewter Picks and Props, I'm taking the over on George Kittle receiving yards. I don't even know what it is at this point, but it's an auto play. Tight ends to go bananas over the Bucs defense. The question is, how do you guard Kittle? Do you go with Tyke Smith, who, has a penchant for knocking the ball out and has been doing a really good job, but, kind of doesn't have the size? Or do you go with Lavonte David, who's lost a little bit of a step, or some of the other linebackers that we've seen struggle? I mean, it's kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation.
I would agree. And if I were the Bucs, I would expect double teams, like double team Kittle and try to shut him down because he's one of the most elite tight ends, very lethal up the middle of the field where the Bucs have struggled. You kind of have to put Tyke Smith and kind of shadow Lavonte David. Otherwise, you're going to see Kittle have a big game. He's done it in the past against the Bucs. I think a big key in this one, Matt, is last year the Bucs had to face Brandon Ayuk, and he had over 150 receiving yards. He was very dangerous. The Bucs only have to account for Deebo Samuel. So you would expect maybe Zion to cover Deebo and then put more attention on George Kittle. Try to shut him down. If you can contain both of those guys, it'll make stopping the run game easier as well.
Again, I don't disagree with you, but I'm just trying to look at like the whole picture because my answer would be put Tyke Smith on George Kittle because everything you said is correct. Like the 49ers have dominated the Bucs, at least offensively, the last 2 years. Well, Tyke Smith wasn't there, so maybe he could be a little bit of a difference. I know Smith gives up the size a little bit, but he has the instinct. Now,
he does.
If you double team Kittle, don't get me wrong, I love Zion McCollum. The Bucs aren't moving Zion McCollum from one side of the field to the other. Maybe they end up doing that. And Todd Bowles kind of mentioned that this week of because last week he pretty much said that they didn't shadow DeAndre Hopkins with Zion McCollum because they thought Xavier Worthy is a good wide receiver as well. And I think he will be a good wide receiver. Right now, he's just a speed guy that isn't really an efficient route runner just yet. Yeah. So with that same thought process going into San Fran, if you want to double Kittle, well, then you're asking Zion to go one-on-one against Deebo Samuel, who's great, but Deebo Samuel lines up everywhere. So if you're the 49ers, first of all, you probably still feel confident in Deebo going up against Zion, even though Zion's been fantastic this year, and that just kind of speaks to how good Deebo can be. But if you didn't do that, then you're going, oh, okay, we're just going to put Deebo on the side of Josh Hayes or Tyreek Funderburg. That's an immediate win. or you could put Debo in the slot, or you can line up Debo in the backfield because they've done that too, because he's just so versatile. He could do many different things. The other side of that is, again, by going by the same thought process of, well, we can only keep Zion on one side because the Niners have two good receivers. Juwan Jennings, I think, deserves some credit. He picked it up once Ayuk went down. This is Ayuk in this picture. I think many people thought the 49ers were going to take a drastic step back. And, Brock Purdy's maybe not having the sensational year that he did as a rookie or even last season. I know that because he's on one of my fantasy teams and he's not really bringing it in that sense. But I think Juwan Jennings, he's only 2 yards behind Debo Samuel in receiving yards. He's not exactly I would be more worried about Juwan Jennings with the 49ers than I would be Xavier Worthy and the Chiefs. And sure, it's easy to look back at it and say, all right, well, he didn't really catch any passes. But Jennings, I think, is a legitimate threat as a wide receiver too.
Yeah, he is. And there was one game this year where he had 3 receiving touchdowns in a game, so he can find the end zone and make those big plays. That's a great point. And then you also have to account for first round pick Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, who we saw at the Senior Bowl. He's quite the savvy route runner and can create separation as well. So those are 3 good wide receivers that the Bucs defense has to account for when they have one good cornerback and then a lot of question marks. And then you also have George Kittle to cover. I mean, there's a reason why the Bucs have lost to the 49ers the past 2 seasons. They made it look a little bit closer last year before the 49ers kind of pulled away, but there's still so much talent around. And then you mentioned Brock Purdy. He had 2 of his best and most efficient games against the Bucs. As a rookie, in his first start, he completed 75% of his passes. And then last year, he had a perfect passer rating, Matt. He had 333 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did whatever he wanted to against the Bucs defense. So that's where the concern lies to me.
Yeah.
Not so much with the offense. They find ways to manufacture points and get yards. That's not the problem, but the Bucs defense really is.
By the way, Ricky Pearsall is a former teammate of Rachaad White at Arizona State. Now, Pearsall ended his college football career at the University of Florida, the same way Jaden Daniels went from Arizona State to LSU. So once again, what the hell was Arizona State doing? Because you had at one point Rachaad White at running back, Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Ricky Pearsall at wide receiver, and Johnny Wilson, who ended up going to Florida State. Johnny Wilson was at Arizona State, another wide receiver. So pretty crazy there. But to your point about Purdy and everything, 2 of his best games against the Buccaneers. Let's also look at the 2024 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their defense. They have made good quarterbacks look great. They've made great quarterbacks look like MVPs. I mean, Lamar Jackson, who is the reigning MVP, looked out of this world against them. Kirk Cousins, we've already addressed that several times. 500 yards in a game, 8 touchdowns. What do you have? Almost 300 yards the next time. So even quarterbacks that are struggling or a little pedestrian at the moment tend to figure it out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for one way or another. And crazy enough, even though the 49ers have been inconsistent and they'll win one, then lose one, they haven't won 2 games in a row. Statistically, they are off the charts on offense. They are top 5 in overall yards, passing yards, and rushing yards. So it's not totally the offense that is the big reason that the 49ers are losing this season. They can go a number of different ways, just like you can get a number of different Celsius energy drink flavors. Celsius, of course, is the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. We love all the flavors of Celsius. I know specifically my favorite is the Arctic Vibe. You also see on the screen there the sparkling watermelon lemonade. So tons and tons of great flavors. If you want to try Celsius and you haven't before, you can head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest location where you can go and pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a health and fitness store, a Target, a Publix, a Stop and Shop, or a Piggly Wiggly, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you know you love Celsius and you want more, you want to get it in bulk, you can buy it in bulk all over at Amazon with the subscribe and save. I'd recommend getting that variety pack because there's tons and tons of wonderful flavors of Celsius. You can get sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. We have a super chat from our good friend Paul, a.k.a. OG Baker Bro. Thank you, Paul, for the
Thank you.
$5 super chat. Who says, if the Bucs lose Sunday, I will support Adam writing draft columns for the remainder of the season. Laughing, crying emoji. 49ers is a winnable game for us, but ... we will see. Yeah, let's take a look at the remaining schedule for the Buccaneers. We did say that this podcast is, how long this losing streak could go for. So it's a 3-game losing streak right now. The Buccaneers are 4-5. If they were to lose against San Fran, that makes them 4-6. It's a 4-game losing streak. Then you have the bye. I will say, the Giants, certainly the Bucs would be a favorite. They should win that game. There's no doubt about it. The Giants have done this weird thing this year, though. Well, they'll stay in a fair amount of games, and then just the wheels come off at the end. And when I say the wheels come off, it means Daniel Jones turns into Daniel Jones and, does the worst for San Francisco. But, I mean, outside, they upset the Seahawks this year. They beat the Seattle Seahawks. They kept it close against the Commanders in each game that they played the Commanders. Really, outside of the Eagles just absolutely torching them at MetLife Stadium, where Saquon went for almost 200 yards or something like that. The
Saquon
Giants
revenge game.
Yeah, the Giants have kept games close. Now, I wouldn't pick the Giants to beat the Buccaneers. I'm just saying that's not a walkover type of game by any means. The Panthers and the Raiders, I think those are, kind of games that they should stomp all over these teams. Panthers are terrible. I don't care that the Panthers beat the Saints. That just shows how terrible that the Saints are.
There's a reason why they fired Dennis Allen.
Yeah, the Raiders, I think, Antonio Pierce benches his quarterback every other quarter. It's insane.
Yep.
He can't stay and stick with one. So if the Bucs lose against the against the 49ers, I could see the losing streak getting as bad as 5 games, losing to the Giants coming out of the bye. But I don't think it'll get any worse than that, because I think they'll beat Carolina and Vegas. And I think they're going to beat the Giants. I'm just saying, if what hits the fans, I think this losing streak could balloon to at most 5.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. When you look at the 3 games following the 49ers, the Giants have the most playmakers. You have Tyrone Tracy, the running back out of Purdue. He's looked really solid. Malik Neighbors. On the defensive side of the ball, they have guys like Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. So they have the playmakers to have a successful team. But you mentioned it, Matt. Daniel Jones, he just he carries the team down. He doesn't lift them up. He's kind of the reason why they've lost 7 games up to this point. When you look at the Panthers and the Raiders, those are I would say the 2 worst teams in the NFL. So I think that's a chance for the Bucs to really get right. And a sign of optimism would be, even if they lose to the 49ers on Sunday and they're 4-6, if they beat the Giants, they beat the Panthers, and they beat the Raiders, as they should, they would be 7-6. And then you kind of look at the rest of the season with a little more optimism. You have the Chargers would probably be the hardest game left there. But the Cowboys have been so up and down. You have the Panthers again, and then the Saints are in a downward spiral. So there is a way that the Bucs could get back to having 9-10 wins this year. But right now, it's that losing streak. And how much does it snowball? Last year, they lost 6 of 7 games. If they lose to the 49ers, they very much could lose against the Giants. But I think the glass is more half full with the remaining schedule.
Yeah. Now, let's be some positive pals here. Let's say they beat the San Francisco 49ers. That would put them at 5-5 heading into the bye, which before the season, I think a lot of us were saying if the Bucs can be 6-4 going into the bye or 5-5 going into the bye, the rest of the season is quite favorable. Let's say they beat San Francisco. Giants, of course, again, bad team, Daniel Jones, terrible quarterback. That's 2 wins in a row, 3-4 over Carolina and Las Vegas. The Chargers are certainly difficult, but the Chargers are winning by defense and running the football. We just saw the Bucs go into Arrowhead, score 24 points, have a game-tying drive by Baker Mayfield and company to tie the game up, and probably should have went for it and win the game. I know the Chargers are tough, but the Chargers aren't dominant by any means. And, the game's in LA. That's not a menacing crowd. There could probably be as many Bucs fans there as there are Chargers fans. Then you look at Dallas. Who knows who's going to be the quarterback at that point?
Right.
I think Dak is about to go on injured reserve, so Dak's going to be at least out for, and I don't know if that's at least 4 games. I don't know if they've had their bye just yet. But you're talking about week 11, 12, 13, 14. That means if Dak is even ready, he'd only have 1 game under his belt before playing against the Buccaneers. And then you got Carolina and New Orleans. If they win against the 49ers this Sunday, 5-5, then we're looking at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is it possible that best case scenario? Obviously, best case scenario is they win out. But, is it plausible? Is it reasonable? Beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Bucs can end up going 12-5?
I think it is. It doesn't seem likely. And again, the defense would really need to turn it around, Matt. They can't keep giving up 30 points a game. But there's enough optimism with the offense that the baseline kind of seems to be 24 points a game. If they can keep doing that, the defense gets it together down the stretch. 10-11 wins is still very much in the realm of possibility. But again, this needs to be a get-right game. Scott mentioned on yesterday's show, it's a must-win game. It's a get-right game in so many ways because it's a completely different dynamic going into the bye 5-5 with a big win or 4-6 and 4 straight losses.
And Narav says, do we get Dean back for the Giants game? So Dean will be, Jamel Dean, of course. Jamel Dean will be eligible to come off of injured reserve. Now, Todd Bowles said earlier in the week, he's like, I got to see him run. I could give you a better answer next week. Now, maybe he said that because he knows it's the bye and there's not going to be media availability. So he won't have to give us an answer. But if Jamel Dean comes back, that's another huge boost for this team. Because I think defensively, with all of their issues, I would say the biggest weakness right now is probably KJ Britt, an inside linebacker. Yeah. I would say the second biggest weakness is Tyreek Funderburk / Josh Hayes. I guess at this point, Josh Hayes, he started the whole game before getting a little injured towards the end. I say that's the second biggest issue. Third and fourth, it's either, and I guess you could switch it either way. It's the regression of Jordan Whitehead or the edge rushers not exactly getting the sack production that we've wanted. Do you see it that way, or how would you determine it?
Yeah, I would agree with the first two. I think the third would have to be the outside linebackers not getting home. Casey Rogers kind of mentioned today that they kind of look at the end number at the end of the year. As long as they're getting sacks, not mad at it. But at the same time, 5.5 sacks collectively from the outside linebackers. The guy on the screen here, Yaya Diaby, was supposed to be the double-digit sack guy. He was supposed to have a breakout season. He's getting the pressures. He's not finishing. He's not getting the sacks. So that's a little bit concerning, especially because he's the number 1 pass rusher. But you look at a guy like, Chris Braswell or Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. JTS looks like he's in his last year in Tampa Bay. Anthony Nelson's a free agent after the year. Braswell hasn't had that breakout yet that you want to see. So there's a lot of concern with outside linebacker, not just this season, kind of going into the future. But overall, there's all those concerns are on the defensive side of the football. And it doesn't look like there's going to be that turnaround unless something drastically changes. Guys really start playing up like they should. There's so much talent there. That's what's frustrating. When you have Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr., there's a lot of playmakers. They're just not making plays.
And that, you said frustrating is the right word, because that's what's so annoying. It's like if the defense, they don't even have to play well. They just have to play
average.
Average to okay, because the offense has been so good. The offense can carry this team to several wins this season. You could argue the offense, should have got them the win against Atlanta in Atlanta by closing the game out. But you know what? You needed a little help from the defense there, and you just couldn't get the help from the defense in that situation. I'm telling you, if they could just turn like 2 of the drives that they allowed for a touchdown into a field goal, I mean, I think like the Bucs could be 6-3 right now, let alone
Yeah.
being 5-4, instead. So it's just like a couple of little things here and there that, if they just get that right on the money, they could be in a much better spot, going into the bye. But, that's why they play the games for sure. And speaking about being right on the money, there's nobody better to work with your money than Immuni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
Shout out to Immuni Financial, who have proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you out with a number of things like advisory services, legacy and retirement planning, insurance services, annuities, and sales and trading. If you want to set up a college account for your kid, you can do that as well at Immuni Financial. And I know you heard them talking about Colorado. You obviously know they're in Tampa. That's why they're advertising with us. But you can get it across all of the United States as well. You can, get it in Delaware or Idaho or Minnesota or California or Texas, wherever you want it to be. There is an Immuni Financial for you. So give them a call, get a free consultation. It doesn't hurt. It's absolutely free. It's free 99, as they say, and see how Immuni Financial can go and help you. So shout out to our friends over at Immuni Financial. Adam, another thing I want to talk about on today's show, and we mentioned him a little bit today, but this man, Liam Cohen,
Yeah.
he had his press conference today, and immediately got asked about would he have gone for 2, and his answer is very interesting. You can see it on our social media, on our Twitter or Instagram right now. But I'm not even talking about anything specifically, just the way that he answered things today, the amount of confidence he said it with, the bravado he said it with, where it wasn't cocky by any means, but it was a little more layered than he's been in recent weeks. I want the season to play out. I want Todd Bowles to be successful. He's earned the right to at least play for his job or whatever it may be. With all of that said, Liam Cohen today in this press conference sounded like a guy that is ready to have a head coaching job, whether it's here in Tampa or, unfortunately, somewhere else. But he was already great at press conferences and interviews. Something else just really clicked in today. I don't know if you felt that too, but
Yeah.
I came away even more impressed than I already was with Liam Cohen, and I'm already very impressed with what he does.
Yeah, I think that was an astute observation by you. And when you mentioned it, definitely agree with you. It looked like he wasn't rocking the shades like he was in this picture, but he definitely had that swagger and kind of added confidence because, why shouldn't he at this point in the season? I mean, he has operated such an elite offense that's overcome so much. And the fact that he's been able to have this success, it's interesting because at the beginning of the season, when Todd Bowles' team was 3-1, you kind of saw Todd Bowles open up a little bit. Liam Cohen's still that way, even through the losses. And I think a lot of that just stems to it's been working on that side of the football. His coaching staff, he was quick to praise them today. All the guys that he brought in with him, they've been doing well, and it's been a cohesive group. And so when you look at that and his ability to have so much success and really leading the guys, he definitely does look the part of being a head coach next year. I don't know if that's going to be elsewhere, if that's going to be here. That remains to be seen. But I think he's ready for that shot, and he's really shown it through the first half of the season.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? Because I don't want to kick Todd Bowles out the door. I know there's plenty of Bucs fans that are very angry with Todd Bowles, and I totally understand. I totally get it why. But Liam Cohen is so good that, like, if the Bucs go on a run and they go to the NFC Championship game, you can't fire Todd Bowles,
No.
obviously. You just went to the NFC Championship game. But at the same time, I don't know if you can let Liam Cohen out the door, you know? Because then you got to start all over from square one of finding an offensive coordinator, and it's another season where Baker has a new play caller, and that's been the case for his entire season. But, man, I mean... I respect the accountability that he takes, especially when things haven't gone right. You know, like they only scored 7 points against the Denver Broncos a couple of weeks ago, earlier in the season, excuse me. They've had some games that they've thrown away, literally, with Baker Mayfield and interceptions. But I don't know, he doesn't get defensive by it. He just kind of calls it for what it is. And you see an exuding confidence, not just of himself, but of Baker Mayfield. He spoke glowingly of Ryan Miller today. I mean, who would have thought we'd be talking about Ryan Miller, who, by the way, is like a six-string guy, second off the practice squad elevation after Cody Thompson, who's now out for what seems like is going to be the year. I know Sterling Shepard was a practice squad guy as well, but making these guys better, and that's really all you can ask for in a coach. But, you know, he's gotten the most out of Ryan Miller. Sterling Shepard, he's kind of revived his career. The running back, Sean Tucker, has made something of himself when they actually freaking use Sean Tucker. Buck Irving is a sensation almost right out of the gate. The only guy that, like, and he hasn't even regressed. The only guy that's kind of like stayed the same in terms of his like production and value to the team is Rachaad White. And I'd say that's more about Rachaad White than it necessarily is Liam Cohen. So just another, you know, knock it out of the park type of performance from Liam Cohen today.
Yeah, and I kind of want to make this comparison here. So last year when you had Dave Canales as offensive coordinator, I mean, obviously he did probably a better job than most people expected in reviving Baker Mayfield's career, but you didn't really expect him to find that head coach job in the offseason until the Panthers really came knocking at his door. But when you look at the job that Cohen's done compared to Canales, I mean, he would definitely have to find a head coaching job if it was offered. I mean, there's probably going to be quite a bit of vacancies around the league, but you really have to be pleased with what he's been able to do. And again, like if the Bucs, they're not able to maybe improve upon last year, like do you retain Cohen or do you go through that cycle again of interviewing another 10 guys for the same spot?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a really difficult, you know, kind of question to have for this team. I want to get to a couple of quotes from Liam Cohen that he had to say today. Talked a lot about Cade Otton, and made a very interesting comment about Cade Otton. He said he's got a knack for a game. He just knows the game, has a great feel. So many of the guys would just say that he's a football player. That's Cade, and you can't say that about everybody. He just has the ability. Sometimes people look at that as a knock. Maybe they're not as fast or as quick or as strong and can jump as high. Being a football player is a darn good thing, and that's what he is. He's tough as nails. He's smart as heck, and I'd love for my son to grow up to be Cade Otton. That's the kind of guy he is. That's a pretty endorsing statement right there.
Yeah.
You want your son to be like Cade Otton. He gave huge. We talk about their assistants as well, for sure. Want to get to, so him still finding success without Mike and Chris and some of the key guys. He said, I think I probably in some ways, sometimes we give a lot of defenses credit, you know, give them too much credit in ways and not taking anything away from Baltimore, Kansas City. Those are unbelievable defenses. But it's like, hey, man, we've got some good players too. These guys can still compete and win. They have confidence. I need to maybe have a little bit more confidence in some ways to be a little bit more explosive with some calls, maybe in some ways. But yeah, it's just funny when you're on the sidelines and Sterling Shepard is running up to you, yelling at you to throw a ball because he's got a lot of confidence. And, you know, in that 2-minute drill, we hit him on the corner out on the sideline. And that was after the stoppage of the clock. He runs over and he's like, I can toast them. And I said, all right, let's go. I called the play for him in the moment to win. So, you know, that's just another example of confidence in his team. And then no coach has to be like funny, but when he shows like that little sense of humor, it's like really being personable. And he kind of did the same thing he was asked about Baker today, and Baker's dealing with a toe injury right now. And, he said he'll be fine. He's moving around a lot better today than he was the last few days. He said, I've kind of been giving him quick jabs like, hey, man, you're only going to be able to run this week, right? You feeling a little slow this week? You all right? And it's just to kind of like piss off Baker and kind of get the most out of him.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the head coaching qualities. Again, you don't have to be a comedian or anything like that, but being able to talk specifics, give you some insight, and then also show like a human element to yourself. I think I think Liam Cohen's been A+ in that area.
Yeah, I would agree. And you like shared all the quotes that I was going to say, but just like Cohen, he definitely seems like that next young offensive mind that is really going to be set up for success in the long run. And you mentioned like his leadership qualities, the ability to be personable. He has such a bright future in the league. And coming from that Shanahan, McVay tree, like he has that experience. And I think that's something that has really, helped him excel this season.
No doubt about it. Another thing as well is just the assistant coaches. Like, is it any surprise that the new blood of coaches, Justin Peele coming in at tight end, McClendon at wide receiver, Skip Pete is an older guy. He's only in his second year coaching these running backs. And it's the offense with all the progressions, all the success. And the defensive coaches, guys that have been there for years, well, that's the struggling side.
Yeah. And when you kind of look at like the offensive coaches, if you were to rank all the coaches, like assistant coaches on the Bucs, in terms of how successful they've been this season, like the top 5 is all offense. And those are the guys that they're young. They've been brought in by Cohen. And compared to the defensive side of the ball, there are a lot of like older coaches that are very stuck in their ways. But guys like Brian McClendon, they've been able to really get the most out of guys like Ryan Miller, Sterling Shepard, that you never would have thought had any chance of really making plays this season. And I think that speaks to just how well they've been coached.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Speaking of making plays, if you think any specific Bucs player is going to make a big play in this game against the 49ers, you might want to put a little prop bet on them over at BetUS. We love our friendship and partnership with BetUS. If you sign up using the promo code PEWTER, that's PEWTER, you can get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. So not just one, but your first 3 deposits, you can get a bonus with BetUS. I haven't seen that with any other gambling company or website. So that's a great deal to have. You also get plus 10% on gamblers insurance as well. The Bucs are one of the funnest teams to bet on in all of sports, not just football, all of sports. The over has gone over in 6 straight games. It's 7-2 on the season. There's a lot of high scoring again because the Bucs defense has struggled. But if you like betting the over, the Bucs are the perfect team to bet on. If you think Baker Mayfield's going to pop off, you can do the over on his passing yards or maybe over on touchdowns. Obviously, the running game has been great. So do some parlays. They have some great prop bets. They're even better with live betting as well if you need a little more feel for the game as it goes on. You can do all that at BetUS using the promo code PEWTER. That's PEWTER. They're also fantastic with their one-on-one customer service, and they have very quick payouts. So it's everything you need as a bettor and a gambler. So check out our friends at BetUS with the promo code PEWTER, PEWTER. We also spoke to Casey Rogers today, the co-defensive coordinator. Adam, was there anything that really stuck out to you with our conversation with him?
Yeah, kind of mentioned the point before about the sacks really being a collective effort. The comment that he had about all the sleepless nights with the tight ends. But there's another thing that I thought stuck out, and that was, so Todd Bowles mentioned earlier in the week that he thought Vita Vea played probably the best game of his career. And I thought it was notable that Casey Rogers really agreed with that. And Vita Vea, man, he was a menace on Monday night. 3 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, a career-high 10 tackles. What's really promising and encouraging for the future, and Casey Rogers kind of talked about it, is Vita Vea kind of ages a little bit, takes on more of a leadership, veteran role. the way that he's able to complement Kalijah Cansey and that Vita Vea is the run stuffer, plugs up the middle. And Kalijah Cansey, he can be that pass rushing. He's a little bit undersized, but he's so explosive. You have those two guys, they really anchor that defense and that front seven. And I think there's a lot of promise there. You saw it kind of come to fruition the first time on Monday night with Kalijah Cansey being injured. But down the stretch, the rest of the way, I think a big way the defense improves is if those two guys keep playing at the level that they did.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you is, do you think it's sustainable? I know that's Yaya on this picture with Vita Vea, but do you think it's sustainable what Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey are doing? Now, obviously, they're not going to get 4 sacks combined in each game, but is it a case of Kalijah Cansey specifically just finding his rhythm a little bit? Because he still just recently came back, especially considering that he missed the entire first month of the season and even more than that. Do you think it's more of the rhythm of Kalijah Cansey kind of getting up to speed with Vita Vea, or, something just worked this week and now it's off to the races?
I mean, the fact that they were able to do what they did against a guy like Creed Humphrey, 2-time Pro Bowl center, Joe Thuney, and like Trey Smith, I mean, that's a very talented interior offensive line. So you ask if it can be sustainable. I think it is. And again, they're not going to get 4 sacks a game, but if they can get 1 to 2, I think that's realistic. And just their ability to really create pressure. I mean, Vita Vea was manhandling Creed Humphrey. He was pushing him back and really forcing.
That's not easy to do.
It's not. And he was forcing Mahomes, like, kind of closing that pocket. So I think that both of them in the future going forward are really going to be able to keep that up. And again, it's not always going to show up in the box score, but it will show up when you watch the game.
And I feel like even if there was going to be decline in like the pressure from the pass rush, specifically with those two guys, just based on, law of averages, things kind of come up and down.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, the pass rush from the outside linebackers, I think we're all in agreement, is disappointing. But I'm not like all hope is lost with them just yet. I still feel like they're going to be able to come around. I don't necessarily know when. I don't necessarily know how. But to me, like, Yaya Diaby is just too good to be where he's at right now. Joe Tryanchenko is probably gone after the season, but he's still a guy that ends up with a couple of sacks. He still falls his way into a couple of as well. And I know you've been pretty big with, Chris Braswell. You had a story about him last week. I want this guy to play more. Maybe not take over the starting job, but let him play a little bit more, because every week it seems like
he's
and
there.
Maybe this is the best comparison, but JTS used to be close but no cigar. That's happening with Chris Braswell now, but Braswell never played as much as JTS did when JTS was younger. Once he became a guy that was in the mix, because that was the problem with JTS, is he was behind JPP back in the day. But even when he finally got a starting role, it was close but no cigar. I'd rather Braswell kind of having that problem now, where if he does become a starter, maybe that's when it really starts to pick up. But I'm not ready to give up on this edge rusher group just yet.
No, and you make a great point when you talk about Chris Braswell and Yaya Diaby. Yaya Diaby's breakout game last year was against the 49ers. Mid-season as a rookie, he had 2 sacks. And that was when it kind of turned for him. He started getting starts down the stretch, and he was getting sacks in bunches. And with Chris Braswell, you spent a second-round pick on him. And you really believe in the talent and the ability, the experience that he had at Alabama. It's time to play him more. You've kind of seen Anthony Nelson and JTS. You kind of have to have one foot in the present, one foot in the future. And it's starting to be like Braswell's making a case to really have both feet in there and be the other starting outside linebacker. Because you kind of talk about the defense as a whole. How do they get better? What do you have to lose? I think playing Braswell down the stretch, it doesn't hurt.
I think you're spot on, because JTS, if he's out this year, and I think Anthony Nelson, his contract is up. I can see Nelson being back, but we know at this point, Anthony Nelson's not a starter. Now he is a as far as 4th string outside linebackers go,
steady.
And I know he's 3rd string right now, but if he was your 4th string outside linebacker next year, that's a quality 4th string outside linebacker. There's no shame in that situation. And you go across the league, you're not going to find. And sure, there's the diamond in the roughs like Shaq Barrett years ago when he was on the Denver Broncos. But for a majority of the situation, you're hoping your fourth string outside linebacker is just capable of lining up and, making a tackle. That's not the case with Anthony Nelson. He's steady Eddie, as he said. He's very efficient. That's what Todd Bowles always likes to use. Air Cecil, a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, thank you very much.
Thank you
for being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, says, wasn't there talks of JTS cross-training at other linebacker spots? Why haven't we seen it? Yeah, that's a good question, because this goes back to Orlando. When I say Orlando, the
Yes.
NFL annual meeting. It used to be the owners' meetings. And Todd Bowles sat there during breakfast and was like, we are, again, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's essentially that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka may end up playing the Joker role, which is essentially you line up in a bunch of different spots. Now, this year, on certain third down situations, JTS has kind of lined up at the linebacker position, but then it's really just he's either faking blitzing, he blitzes, or he drops back in coverage. I don't know if that's what everybody envisioned. At this point, I think it's very difficult if you wanted to train Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to be more than just a third down blitzing linebacker. He's not a traditional linebacker the way that KJ Britt is, especially the way Levante David is. And we've already talked about miscommunication, guys not being in the right spot. I don't think JTS is going to help that situation by actually moving to inside linebacker.
No, but you mentioned that, like playing the Joker role. He also said back then one of his defensive chess pieces was Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. And at the time, it was surprising. Like, Todd Bowles is so high on this guy that's only had 4 sacks a season. But the ability for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has kind of always been there. He just really hasn't put it together. But putting him at inside linebacker, it would be interesting, like just based on his athletic profile and the way that he's able to, I would say he's probably slightly above average as a run defender. I think he could hold his own. But again, that miscommunication with the team really harping on the communication issues every week, I don't think it would help there. But again, maybe putting him in there for a few snaps here and there, it can't be much worse. And he has that skill set, and it would kind of give Braswell more time to shine at outside linebacker.
Speaking of being on the move, we're going to be moving on the Tampa Bay Bucs cruise.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa!
Hey! Tampa! Hey! We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr!
Arr!
I am very excited for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise coming up March 7th through the 10th. Now, the cruise takes off in March out in Key West, goes to the Bimini in the Bahamas. Going to be a great time. Very excited for it. But if you want to reserve your cabin, and it's almost full, so you only have a little bit of more time, the final date to reserve your cabin for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise is on December 1st. So you don't have until like January or February. You have to get your cabin by December 1st. Now, that's less than a month away, but it's pretty much the holiday season. I know some people say, let Thanksgiving have its day. Other people are already in full swing. If you want to get tickets for a friend, family, loved one, whatever the case may be, not a bad idea for a cruise ticket present for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise, especially if that person is a huge Buccaneers fan. There's going to be a ton of fun events. There's pool volleyball. There's going to be trivia, meet and greet parties, all that stuff. You're going to have Jordan Whitehead on it. Yaya Diaby's been there before. Rashad White. Bunch of Bucs legends are confirmed as well. Mike Allstott, Derek Brooks. This is going to be a boatload of fun, pun intended, since we're on a cruise ship. Pewter Report's going to be there as well. I think we're going to do a podcast or at least do some type of like meet and greet. So we know you guys are there to hang out with the players, but you can hang out with us as well, have some drinks, chop it up, tell you some inside stories that, well, we can't really say on the podcast. So going to be a great time. If you want to reserve your cabin, you can go to TampaBayBucsCruise.com or give them a call at 800-975-7112. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com and or give them a call at 800-975-7112. I also want to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of our Pewter Platinum members. Appreciate Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, and Eric McMillan. Thank you so much for your support of PewterReport.com. You guys and gals are the absolute best, and you guys and gals will also get to enjoy our Pewter Insider coming up tomorrow on Friday at 1:30. We're back to our original time. This is for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. The topic is, will Todd Bowles get out-coached again? Of course, we will also discuss any questions and comments that you have. So that is coming up tomorrow. We also have on Sunday the Pewter pregame show that'll start at 9 a.m. That'll be myself and Scott Reynolds talk about some of the biggest matchups going on. And the Pewter Game Day show takes place at 1 o'clock. It'll be me and Josh Capo watching live and reacting to Bucs versus 49ers. So those are some updates for everybody. I also want to give a quick shout out to the host over at the Green Lemon. Shout out to you. You know who you are. Before we wrap up the show, and thank you very much for your support as well and the kind words. Before we wrap up the show, anything else you want to get into, Adam?
When you look at like the 49ers defense, I know we kind of talked about Liam Cohen a lot, and he doesn't want to knock the Ravens or the Chiefs because they're very talented. But two guys that I think are really going to be impactful on Sunday and be all over the field, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Those are two guys he really talked about today. Fred Warner, he could have kept going, giving this man compliments. He gave him like 10 compliments.
He did.
He's athletic. He's springy. He's all over the field. He's athletic, rangy. He just went on. And then Nick Bosa, back in 2022 when he was with the Rams, he was a menace in both those games. He had 3.5 sacks. He kind of talked about today that he's a relentless beast. I think those are two guys that you're going to be hearing a lot of on Sunday.
Yeah, they definitely have to stop Bosa. There's no doubt about it. Warner will probably be the one most likely covering Cade Otton. So it's a great matchup of, does Cade Otton continue to ball out the way he has, or does Warner show why he's arguably the best inside linebacker in the league? You could also discuss this with Scott Reynolds over on Autograph. He's going to be on the Autograph app, chatting with Bucs fans a half an hour before the game, before it kicks off at 1 o'clock. So sign up with the Autograph app. Use the promo code Pewter. That's PEWTER. You can get all your Pewter Report news and all Bucs news and other sports as well, and you get rewarded for it by being a fan. It's co-founded by Tom Brady. You can get it on Android and iPhones, and it's the perfect one-stop shop to get all of your favorite sports teams' information, including the Buccaneers. So read Pewter Report news, watch Pewter Report videos and podcasts, get rewarded in one free app with Autograph using the promo code Pewter, PEWTER. And just a reminder again, you can chat with SR half an hour before the game. All right, that's going to do it for us. It's been a lot of fun this afternoon. Hopefully it's a lot of fun on Sunday with the Buccaneers win. But until then, for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.